Nigeria's Apex Bank last week Wednesday announced its plan to redesign some Naira notes, a decision that has so far received backlash nationwide. Barely 48 hours after the CBN governor made the announcement, the finance minister Zainab Ahmed faulted the CBN's plan, describing it as ill-timed. Zainab, who spoke during a budget debate of the ministry before the National Assembly, said that the CBN did not consult her ministry before taking the decision to redesign Naira notes by December.
Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari has declared her support for the move by the Central Bank of Nigeria to redesign the three largest denominations of the Naira, the 200, 500 and 1,000 Naira notes, respectively. What this means for Nigeria's already dwindling economy is a question that many have not ceased to ask. Now, here with us this morning is Country Director, Budget Nigeria, Gabriel Okeowo. And of course, he will be joining us. Thanks for joining us. Good morning.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
All right. So, yes, it's a little confusing for lots of people. You know, there's people who have fears about how this will affect the value of the Naira and the exchange rate and Nigeria's economy at this time. People have also mentioned, the timing. We're heading towards general elections in a few months. The CBN, of course, has spoken about security and other reasons behind this move. So I want you to get Budget's perspective. Do you think that this might be a maybe faulty move by the CBN, or do you agree that it's pretty necessary?
Thank you very much for having me on the show this morning. And I know that a lot of reaction has trailed the introduction or the announcement of the new Naira note, and that in itself is not a bad idea. Every country of the world at some intervals do renew or change the design of their currency, which is the legal tender. And in Nigeria, for example, we are not going to consider it as a wrong thing to do. However, it was disheartening to realize that that was being done without a proper planning. And proper planning in this case is that both the monetary arm of our economy, which the CBN handles, and the fiscal arm of our economy, which the Ministry of Finance handles, one would have thought that the decision to redesign the Naira note would have been a unanimous decision of all the economic team of the nation, right? But what we have seen is that this is a situation where Central Bank is doing its own thing, and the Ministry of Finance, on the other hand, wasn't kept in the loop of that discussion. And we have had statement from the presidency saying that the president supported and gave his approval for the redesign of the Naira note. Yes, would there be an advantage for us as a nation at this time if the Naira note, the higher denomination is redesigned? Yes. I see a lot of disadvantage, a lot of advantage rather. However, those advantages can also be undermined if we do not clearly see the policy direction that this is contributing into. And that policy direction has to be a concerted effort, has to be a bigger picture, right? That we are seeing, that the citizen is seeing, but even before the citizen, the drivers of the economy itself. Talking about the Minister for Finance, the CBN governor, the National Assembly, the presidency, it has to be a unanimous decision of all of these critical stakeholders. So, for example, if we begin to look at, of course, what advantage do we get if we redesign the Naira note, we can count a handful of that. However, as good as that would be, right, if the Ministry of Finance, if the arm of government that is responsible for planning our economy, forecasting and managing our resources are not kept in the loop, we are going to have a situation where we are not able to harness the benefits that redesigning the Naira note has for us as a nation.
All right, Gabriel. Now, some of the arguments against that would be the fact that, according to the provisions of the CBN Act, Section 20, maybe the approval of the Ministry of Finance is not necessary, in the sense they would say that it is the approval of the president in this case that is required. But let's shift the conversation elsewhere. Part of the reasons that the CBN has given for this is that they want to ensure that the money outside is being brought back into the vault of these commercial banks. So according to reports, as at September, we had 3.23 trillion naira in circulation, but unfortunately, roughly over 2 million of this is outside the bank vaults. Now, let's look at some numbers. And now these are stats that show that in July, the value of electronic payments was 204 trillion naira. The value of transactions on POS was 6 trillion naira, and the value of transactions on mobile money transfer was over 9 trillion naira. So the question is, when we have all of this 204 trillion naira here, over 6 trillion naira here, over 9 trillion naira here, is it really worth it to chase after the slightly over 2 trillion naira that's in circulation, in the cash that's not in the bank vault? Is it really worth it, is a question that some people are asking.
To be sincere, if we want to come from the direction of does it worth it to do this, right? We can draw. Our own first reaction when we saw the announcement from the central bank was that what could be the strategic driver of this decision? And the first thing that came to mind is that this could be a strategy to mop up funds, right? What we have seen in the recent years is that the class of our population that amass our wealth illicitly, right, have also learned how to go about this without necessarily being in the eye of the law enforcement agent. When BVN was introduced, BVN came with an advantage that we are able to trace every naira in the bank account to an individual, right? And when that began to happen, that was also the same time when we now began to saw a rise in number of fiscal cash that has been stashed in homes, in septic tanks, and the likes, right? So the first thing that will come to anybody's head is, okay, this is a strategy for people to bring out, their funds that they are holding that is not being in circulation, to bring it out to bank. When they bring it out to bank, two things will happen. There will be more naira in circulation. That's one. There will be, if there are no clever way for those that stash their naira in septic tanks, in their wardrobes, if there are no clever ways, if they do not outsmart the system, there's going to be a way for the EFCC, for the banks to be able to see increase in the financial flow in a particular account that is tied to a particular person, right? And that is what I was referring to earlier on when I said, good as this is, right? This would have been nice if we are able to see that strategic direction that the CBN is putting forward, and then all the other stakeholders. The stakeholders in this case, nobody is saying CBN needs to get the approval of the Ministry of Finance, but they need to know, Ministry of Finance need to know that this action that is going to be taken by CBN is also going to be helping us to, for example, in the proposed budget for 2023, we're already looking at a budget deficit of over 10 trillion naira, right? So we should be able to see how or what advantage does the mop-up of this fund with the CBN strategy, how is it going to help us in blocking or reducing the deficit or the new borrowings that we are going to be doing in 2023. EFCC, ICPC should also come to play here, right? For them to be at alert, to be able to lay out on illicit financial flow that will now come into new bank accounts, right, by virtue of linkage to BVN and to individual accounts, to be able to also ask questions, pick on individuals and ask questions, and really trickle it down in the fight against corruption in Nigeria. Because other than the fact that this will allow funds to come out, right, back to the system. If we look at the other side of it, immediately this announcement was made, for example, the rate of Nigerian naira to dollar went up, right? Now, as at yesterday, I learned dollar is changing for almost 800 naira. And that is because there is fear of what will then happen by the time this mop-up fund begin to come into effect on the 15th of December. Yes, there are advantage. There are advantage of even people in the rural community that naturally will keep their funds at home. There is an advantage of them now being forced to go into bank or being made to take their funds into bank. We see all of those advantages, but I still maintain my ground, and I think this is our position as an organization, that without the concerted effort, and it is not too late, right? It is not too late. Instead of CBN, Ministry of Finance, Presidency coming out to throw shades at each other, it's not too late for all of these critical stakeholders, the drivers of our economy, to come together and see the bigger picture and how this is going to help Nigeria as a whole.
Well, just to also quickly mention before our final question, I believe that as part of the CBN's board, there is a permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance that is also a part of the board of CBN, I believe, and should have been the voice to the Minister of Finance to let her know that these changes were going to be made. But apparently it doesn't seem like that happened. And so I'm just trying to clarify with the picture of, she was completely kept in the dark, which is possible, but there's a person, a permanent secretary in the board of CBN that should have been part of that decision. But I also want you to expand as briefly as possible what this break-in relationship or seeming break-in relationship between the Ministry of Finance and the CBN governor, what this really shows about Nigeria's government and, the current economic challenges that we're having. Are these also, red flags?
Yes, I mean, unfortunately, and this is not just coming from now that we had the Minister of Finance saying our ministry wasn't carried along in the decision. We have also seen, even before now, instances where some MPAs have accused CBN of taking over their responsibility. If you look at a lot of social intervention, a lot of our agricultural intervention that is being rolled out as a nation. Some of them, you see CBN actively being at the forefront of running some of these interventions. And this is what we are saying. CBN, the Apex Bank, should, be in that position where all its energy and technical expertise is directed towards strengthening our monetary policy, right? Yes, they can also be involved in regulating and seeing to some intervention of the government. But when it then becomes a situation where CBN itself is now the driver of those interventions, it calls for question, it calls for what
all right, Gabriel.
Yeah,
I mean, I wish we could, completely open up these things and spread this conversation as far and wide as possible. But in the interest of time, we have to end it here. We, of course, will continue to follow. We're heading towards Christmas. We definitely will bring you back again to share on food inflation as Nigerians prepare for the Christmas. But thank you very much for your time this morning, and good to speak with you again.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Absolutely.